Good day. Welcome to today's episode of the Cory Morgan Show. As the name would imply, I am indeed Cory Morgan. This is my weekly playground with the Western Standard and all the rest of all those channels out there, the Cowboy Network, Wild TV, where I can rant, rave, go on about some news issues, have some interactions with some commenters, talk to some cool guests, and see what's happening in the news for the week. And as always, there's lots to cover. So thanks for joining me. I got a really good one today. I've got a fella, his name is Dixon DeLorme, but he's probably better known to you as Quick Dick McDick. He is an agricultural producer in Saskatchewan. He's built quite a social media name for himself, getting out there. He's done some great fundraising for charity work and really gets the agricultural producers' message out there in a format, in a way that, you know, is difficult to translate for urban living people. He's always fun to talk with, so it's great to have him on, and my conversation with him will be playing in a little while. I'll have a news check-in with our news editor in a little while, and I'll be talking about a few other things. So I always start these shows off, though, with a monologue and, you know, something like the columns I write and things like that. I like sharing. I share things. I'm in the open with that on social media and on this show about personal experiences because they can apply to real-world issues. And unfortunately, I had a very recent one that's very direct, and it's worth talking about. So I've written several times already on the consequences of well-meaning but misguided. It's a long trend of deinstitutionalization for people suffering from mental illness. Now, my family, unfortunately, just got to experience the outcome of that trend directly. Recently, a close family member of mine experienced a sudden and severe mental breakdown. And while he thankfully wasn't threatening to harm himself or others, he was in a state of agitation and paranoia so serious he couldn't be safely managed within a family household, though we tried. He wasn't capable of taking care of himself, and we couldn't keep him contained. So the decision was made to take him in for professional help and evaluation. This wasn't a situation, though, where you could just schedule an appointment and wait a few weeks to see a counselor or a psychiatrist. It was acute, and we needed immediate help for him. So our family member was taken to one of Calgary's hospitals, and we began through the emergency department. And just so you know, that's the only way to check somebody in during such an episode. As with pretty much all the emergency departments across Canada, it was busy, they were harried, and they were backed up with admissions. It took over 9 hours of waiting before a temporary bed could be found, and he was stuck in that temporary bed for another day until a bed could be found in the mental health unit for some better assessment and to seek treatment options. Now, it's just typical in our healthcare system. The medical professionals are fantastic. I mean, all the way from the people cleaning the rooms to the nurses to the doctors. They're hardworking and patient people, and they're doing a hell of a tough job. The problem is getting through the queue to get to them. The triage area of a hospital. It's by nature a chaotic and high-stress environment. It's unfair and unhealthy to keep somebody in a serious state of mental health distress in such an environment. And it doesn't do those waiting for physical medical help any favors either, being seated next to a paranoid, delusional person for hours. That's all the options we have right now, though. Canada's monopolized public health care model has evolved into a very hospital-centric model. We pack every type of specialty, treatment, and procedure into overcrowded and often poorly managed general hospitals, when many of these services could and should be provided in specialized facilities outside of the hospital. Now, one of those specialized services is acute mental health treatment. Calgary has a population or metropolitan population of 1.5 million people, yet it doesn't have a single generalized psychiatric hospital. Major hospitals, they all have wards dedicated to secured mental health treatment. And there's a forensic psychiatric facility for the criminally insane up by our prison. But there's no specialized facility for just general patients, even though so many people get touched by mental health issues. We recognize that pediatric healthcare is so specialized, we build children's hospitals, yet we can't accept the need for psychiatric hospitals. Now, psychiatric hospitals, they boomed in North America at the turn of the 19th century when it was noted that a large segment of inmates in the prison system were suffering from mental health disorders. Facilities were built to humanely house and treat people with psychiatric disorders, and initially that's what they did. Unfortunately, the facilities became dumping grounds for people the state didn't want to deal with over time, and funding began to run short. Conditions became inhumane and abuse was rife, and by the 1950s, 500,000 Americans were secured in mental hospitals. Canada had tens of thousands secured as well, and the conditions became unacceptable. That began the trend for deinstitutionalization through the 60s, and in North America, mental hospitals began reducing the size and closing altogether. But no new facilities were built, and the remaining ones were often outdated and poorly maintained. So as people were turned out into the communities with well wishes, they often didn't have much support, and we're seeing the consequences of that today. It's estimated that 25% of the homeless you see on the streets are suffering from mental health disorders, and as much as 15% of the inmates in prisons. While we don't like the idea of securing the mentally ill long-term in hospitals, can we keep pretending they're better off in the streets or in jail? We've destigmatized a lot of mental health disorders, depression, things like that, and we should. It's time to destigmatize mental health hospitals, extended stay mental health facilities. They don't need to be inhumane and nasty and odious as they used to be. I assure you, the current wards in existing hospitals are not good spots for people to reside long-term. Our healthcare system needs a lot of reforms. One big one, though, would be to decouple mental health wards from general hospitals and build facilities that can provide comprehensive mental health care services, from admission to evaluation to day treatment, and yes, possibly secured treatment if need be. Specialized facilities can offer much more effective treatment and take the pressure off of the hospitals. Committing somebody is and should always be a last resort, but we need to have that option available at need, and quickly at times, even if we don't like to think or talk about it. I understand we want to respect people's dignity, but there's not much dignity remaining when a person's on the streets, in jail, or possibly even dead for lack of mental health treatment facilities. Had my family member not had the family support he had, I'm certain he'd be facing one of those fates right now. So again, guys, it's time for some frank talk and treating the people who are suffering from mental illness as the illness it is, and the illness that needs specialized, separate treatment, because they're falling through the cracks. And it's not like we aren't paying for it anyway. We pay for it. It's just that we're paying for it through our prisons, through our regular hospitals, and again, in homeless supports. So either way, we're still hoping for the best for my family member. He's still incarcerated in there right now, and many other families are dealing with this. I just wanted to get that out there and remind people healthcare reform comes with a lot of other aspects beyond just the physiological area of it. All right, let's get on and see what else is happening out there in the big wide world and check in with our news editor, Dave Naylor. Hey, Dave, how's it going out there?
It's all right, Cory, and speak the word. What you said about mental health is very, very true. I think the lack of facilities and support for people suffering from mental health issues in Canada is absolutely criminal. It's just not enough. And I wish your family member all the best.
Thanks. Yes. Well, we're going to keep pushing. He's one of the fortunate ones, like I said, to have a stubborn family pushing. But unfortunately, a lot of people fall through the cracks.
Exactly. So I'm just back from Arizona, 39 degrees Celsius, sitting in the sun. And I got to say, I kind of took to that desert landscape. I was a bit afraid because, I'm terrified, absolutely terrified of snakes. But, all those cactuses, they're kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a lot more to the desert than people realize if you have a look around. They're really nice areas. I used to love working down there when I was in the oil field. I mean, I'd roast, but the scenery is actually nice.
Yeah, it is. Anyways, glad to be back and at the grind, and we're getting close to an election call, obviously. So cornucopia of news today already up on the website. Cory, leading off with, Rachel Notley hasn't been very nice to us in the past week. She's refused to give us any sort of NDP literature, and she's banned the Western Standard from asking questions at her press conference. So today, the Independent Press Gallery of Canada has sent her a letter demanding that she change her evil ways and allow independent journalists to ask questions. There's also a story up from our energy expert, Sean Polser, talking about the worldwide sales of electrical vehicles. And surprisingly, Cory, China is leading the way. More electrical vehicles are sold in China than anywhere else in the world. We got a story on a Edmonton fella. This is one of the stories you just love, Cory. He's released from jail. The police issue a warning, and wouldn't you just know it, he's committing crimes again. He's after his release, and police are again issuing another warning. They're urging people who have run into this fella to come and have a chat with them. We've got stories up already on the PSAC strike that's happening across Canada. More than 150,000 government workers are having to, as you said on Twitter today, Cory, get off their couches and go to the picket line. They're striking for a whole bunch more money and the ability to work from home. So nice work if you can get it. A couple of other stories to bring to your attention. Somebody decided to go on a joyride through the Morley School and caused tens of thousands of dollars in damage. So we've got a story up there on that and loads of photos. And the best news of the day, Cory, comes from Tim Hortons. After a 10-year absence, they are bringing back my favorite donut. So yes, as of I think it's May 1st, National Donut Day, Walnut Crunch is available again. So I'll be late for work that day, Cory, because I'll be first in line to get one of those babies.
Then we got to sit through the meeting with you having the donut sweats.
You betcha. Love those walnut crunches.
Well, they make it special for us. All right. Well, I'll let you get back to it. There is a lot breaking and going on out there. So good to have you in for a check-in, and welcome back to the Great White North, Dave.
Thanks, Cory.
Thank you. So that is our news director, Dave Naylor. And as you heard, yes, we're covering a lot of things across this country all the time. The news is breaking almost faster than we can write it. Lots of things going on. So this is where I nag you quickly that remind you, the Western Standard, we don't take tax dollars in any sort of way. The way we can do this is through subscribers. So you go to the westernstandard.news and you can see that many of those articles are behind a paywall for $9.99 a month. It's well worth it. It's just like a newspaper subscription. You can get in there, and that supports our reporters, our editors, our people across the country to keep those stories fresh, keep them coming. And we're putting out more than a lot of the bigger outlets who've been around for a long, long time. So if you haven't subscribed already, get on there, guys. $99 for a year. And if you've already subscribed, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it. So yes, this strike, the public service workers, I mean, okay, I mock them, I poke fun at them. I had another fun one on Twitter. I pointed out that apparently traffic has dropped on Pornhub since they all went out to hit the picket lines. But I mean, the thing is that the image of lazy civil servants is founded to a degree. I know some of them probably work very hard, but come on. We've all dealt with government services. We know darn well, listening to these guys, their massive pensions, their massive vacation times, the huge amount of sick days they're allowed to have. They've already been working from home. You have to wait, 4, 5, 6 months to get a passport renewed from these guys. They screw up your tax returns half the time. And now they said, you know what, we're going to walk out while everybody else is tightening their belts because we want more days working from home. And we want as much, and it depends on which category, as high as a 47% wage increase. With the CRA, they're looking for 30%. CRA, that's, Canada Revenue Agency. These are the ones going after you to pay more taxes. They want a 30% raise over 3 years, 10% a year. Come on, guys. That's a lot of money. Now, already on average, government workers make almost 9% more than your comparable private sector worker. And then, of course, once you bring in the other benefits, they're doing very well for themselves, guys. They tend to retire 2.5 years earlier because they have those huge extra pension plans. Let's see, they get, for personal reasons, they average 14.9 paid days off a year. That's on top of the vacation pay they already get. And of course, all the premiums and perks and benefits. So the other problem is the amount of them. I mean, just since 2015, in 2015, we had 3.6 million federal government workers. Now there's 4.2 million. It's growing massively, the number of them. And really, are your services getting better? How many things can you look at from the federal government? Boy, they're doing a much better job than they did a few years ago. These civil service unions, guys, they're gonna bleed us dry. We got massive deficits. We got taxes going up. We got inflation going bad, hitting the rest of us as it is. And some of the most secure and well-paid people in the country now have the gall to get out and say, we're going to refuse to work. We're getting off our couches for a day, and we're holding picket signs out and whining for a raise. Unfortunately, they have us over a barrel. It's tax time. Trudeau will probably cave. He's not exactly known for his backbone. And they'll get their raise. And we will all pay a dear, dear price for that. It's frustrating, and it'll be interesting to see how long this holds on. I think they're going to hold on for a bit until to make it look like the government tried to hold off, and then they'll just give them everything they want because, that's what liberals do. All right. Well, let's get on to somebody who can speak a lot more common sense. Again, as I said, this was pre-recorded. We usually do things live, but Quick Dick McDick is a real agricultural producer out in the field. It's hard to corner him, to get him on the show. I finally did, right from out there when he was working on a fencing project, and we had a great conversation. So check this out.
And we can listen to a lot of seminars and listen to a lot of podcasts and everything, but I think a really unique way to connect with audiences nowadays is to visually show people, what we do. And I think it helps for people to be able to draw a parallel to some of the work that goes into, agriculture and maybe some things that happen in oil and gas. And hell, sometimes we just go and do stuff that has nothing to do with anything. We just try and laugh a little bit, right? So.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm going to segue this into a little bit of what I want to talk about. So you kind of grew up in an agricultural environment. You ended up taking off to the oil field for a while and put some time in there, and then you kind of migrated back to the ag sector. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly. I did.
Yeah, we just got to reset that and get it back to the start. We're not used to recorded stuff. We're better with the live. So let's start that right from the beginning again, guys. Thanks for your patience, and have a listen to quick Dick McDick here. All right. Well, we are here finally. I've got him on my show. We've had him on some other Western states before, but I haven't managed to corner you. We got quick Dick McDick. I pulled him away from a fencing task, as you can see, and I've got him on to chat with us. So thanks a lot for joining us today. I've really been looking forward to this.
Hey, Cory. Yeah, good to see you, man. It's there's never a dull moment around here. It's hard to get to everybody, but thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, well, that's a lot of, like what you've built. I mean, for those who aren't familiar with you, that most of our viewers are, you're a person working in the ag industry. You're out in Saskatchewan, and you put together a lot of fantastic videos and commentary that I think really helps bring home the challenges of working in the agricultural sector, without bitching about it and adding some humor to the whole thing. It's just kind of drives it home to people who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, well, I think I bitch about it sometimes too, but I think we're all guilty of that a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I try to do what I can to show people what it's like out here firsthand. We can listen to a lot of seminars and listen to a lot of podcasts and everything, but I think a really unique way to connect with audiences nowadays is to visually show people, what we do, and I think it helps for people to be able to draw a parallel to some of the work that goes into, agriculture and maybe some things that happen in oil and gas. And hell, sometimes we just go and do stuff that has nothing to do with anything. We just try and laugh a little bit, right? So.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm going to segue this into a little bit of what I want to talk about. So you kind of grew up in an agricultural environment. You ended up taking off to the oil field for a while and put some time in there, and then you kind of migrated back to the ag sector. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly. I did. So I grew up in more on the cattle, cow-calf production side of agriculture. And then, I did 19 years of oil and gas in northern Alberta. And that took me all over to northern BC, the Northwest Territories, Yukon, Arctic Circle. And then wound up coming back home here, would be close to 4 years ago here now. And I'm back in the ag here now. Working with another much larger farmer than I am myself, and getting back into cattle and learning a lot on the grain side here now too.
Right on. So and that's what happened is you came back, but I mean, what I wanted to talk about was that changing demographic, and I mentioned it earlier. We've had a report recently that we're expecting 40% of current ag producers to retire within the next 10 years, and a lot of the younger generation isn't kind of taking up the horns on that. It's like we might end up with quite a crisis for producers very soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it, and I always look at a lot of these reports that come out, especially when it's from RBC, but especially they were talking about the amount of foreign workers that we'd have to come in to take up the reins or have people migrate to Canada. A lot of that has to do with with the horticulture side of agriculture. That's the greenhouses and your lettuce and carrots and tomatoes and everything. A lot of that's very, labor intensive. I think there's a lot of different processes that are happening nowadays to try and take some of the labor intensive processes out of it, which happens with agriculture all over the place. We're more into the oil seeds and cereals part of agriculture here, and obviously the beef industry. We face a little bit different of a set of challenges though here. I think there's a labor shortage and people retiring. Doesn't mean that agriculture is going to go anywhere. But I think what we share commonly throughout agriculture in Canada is large corporations coming in to invest and taking away some opportunity for younger people that are interested in getting into agriculture to be able to do it. Like you take myself, for example. I was lucky enough that I bought some land years ago, and I had some land here and was ready to come back and take that land over from the people that were renting it from me. But still, your investment into equipment and technology and fertilizers and everything else, especially if you're getting into cattle, to buy into your cattle herd and everything is insane, right? So I'm just go figure. I'm getting a low battery warning. But it's just it takes a lot of money, and if you don't have land, you're not going to do any of it. And when we have whether it be foreign investment companies or local investment companies here in Saskatchewan. You know, we've got Angelic and Manette's that are big corporate farms that are starting to own a lot of the land. And when a lot of the land's prices start going up and up and up, and they come in and start paying a little more for rent, and then they can artificially kind of inflate the price of their land just because they own so much of it. So if they buy a quarter section next to them for, you know, 3/4 more than what the average person would pay for it, all the land that they own around it artificially goes up in value as well. So there's some big challenges, and I think a lot of people don't realize, you know, the catalyst that's fueling these challenges.
Yeah, well, it's a huge capital investment if somebody were to try and come from outside and get into something like that. And kind of as you pointed out too, I mean, the days of the little subsistence romantic, subsistence farm for a family to run are sort of long gone now. You've got to run a large enterprise, and with modern equipment, and that's part of it. Is a smaller labor pool can really maintain a much larger amount of fields. But again, you need some very advanced training and advanced equipment and chemicals in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take it down a little bit different of an alley here too, is another challenge I feel that we face is technology is going to continue to advance. I've done a few talks on this at some different ag shows and stuff. And when we see like where spraying's going and autonomy and self-driving tractors and combines and all this stuff, there's nobody out here that's against that, because it helps. You know, if you have an operation that only has 5 employees and you want to take on a little bit more land to try and help pay for some of the equipment that you've got, no one's against it, because it's one less head that you might need running it, which is fine. But the people that you do get, I mean, the quality labor is something that is lacking. People contributed to, you know, they don't pay enough in agriculture. There's not enough money there for it. I don't see that. Where we are, hired labor is well compensated for what they do out here. I think it's what we see with the whole scope of labor in general in Canada and our new world here, is that you got to get out of bed at 6 a.m. and you are actually going to have to go and physically work for your money. And I believe that we have a generation of people coming up to take over this generation that we have right now that are afraid of hard physical labor. And that's a problem. And that's where you see the people that are in the horticulture industry and in your fruits and vegetables. That is hard physical labor. And in my opinion, which I mean, take it as you will, that's why we see a lot of temporary foreign workers coming into Canada, because these are people that are not afraid of hard work, you know? And I mean, that's just my toonie. I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me on that, but it's what I see from the boots on the ground perspective, right?
Well, I think it's a fantastic point. I mean, I was in the oil field for 20 years as well. And I mean, back then that was the days of, 10, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, month at a time till you get home. But now we've got a generation that's talking about going on to a 4-day work week because 40 hours is too much to put in.
That's right. But there's another side to it too, Cory. Like, I mean, our government policy, like, it decentivizes you to work harder. The more money you make, the more taxes you have to pay, the more you go into a higher tax bracket. And when you look at clawbacks of what happens in the Canadian economy, we're slowly taking away the incentive for people to work harder. Like, there's an actual monetized incentive for you to work harder. And if that's taken away, well, I mean, listen, here, I'm going to pick this up and show you where I'm at here right now. Like, I mean, I'm out here in basically the middle of nowhere, putting in an extremely expensive fence right now. But I'm here because I love it, but it needs to be done because it's what I need to get done as well. I wouldn't expect somebody that's coming out here to work for me to have to love it. I just need to pay them for their time to be here. And that being, you know, contrary to me having that requirement of them, I require them to be here to do what I'm paying them to do. I mean, to me, it's a simple transaction, but we just live in a society where I need to be beholden to the person that's here. We should just have a contractual agreement that, hey, we're here to get a job done. Let's love it. Let's do it. And let's go on from there, right?
Well, yeah, and it's a business like any other. Well, it's not like any other. That's part of the problem, though. I mean, it's got some seasonal highs and lows. It's got times where you're working like crazy, times where it's only moderately working, and that makes it difficult for staffing as well. I mean, when you have to take them for certain periods, I mean, that's where you put in a bunch of overtime. They get gouged on their check, as you say, and then later on when it's a little slower, well, maybe they could have used that money then. Speaking of taxes, though, you put out a great video. You've talked about that a couple of times. I mean, the pressures that are coming on for producers, people are screaming at producers, they're screaming at retailers as to why the costs of food are going up, but they're forgetting that the government is really contributing to the cost, and the carbon tax is a big one.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's what I tried to illustrate in my last carbon tax video. I've tried to illustrate it in all of them, but it just seems to go to the wayside. And you have a lot of people fight the point that even though, so we're waiting on Bill C-234 to receive royal assent. It's got to pass the Senate here once more before it receives royal assent. And that would exempt farm operations in Canada that don't have their own carbon pricing structure, which, I mean, basically is just Quebec because they don't have one, and BC because they have their own that doesn't work. But that would exempt natural gas and propane on farm use that we use to heat our barns, dry grain, all that good stuff, right? Well, we still pay a carbon tax on our electricity here in Saskatchewan, which we need to do all the said above things and to run our bin fans and to do everything else that we do on an operation. But anything that we bring in third party to the farm or anything that we ship third party from the farm are all like subject to carbon tax. So if we're having grain hauled out or fertilizer hauled in, we get a charge passed on to us from that fuel because it's a commercial operation bringing the fertilizer to the farm. Then take that back a step to the fertilizer that's in the trailer. Well, the manufacturers that CFL, say, in Medicine Hat that have manufactured the fertilizer, they're not exempt from a carbon tax. They use a lot of natural gas to make NH3 and different fertilizers. And look at Nutrien here in Saskatchewan, who mine potash. All these places are charged carbon taxes, and that just comes down to their price, which gets passed on to us. And then when the product is done and grown and shipped away from the farm here, it turns commercial again as soon as it's out of our hands. And so that we are price takers on this side, we're price takers on this side. And then if you take the produced side of what we grow here on farms and send that down to the consumer that's in the grocery store, from the time it leaves the farm to the time it gets home in their, of course, non-reusable plastic bags that don't exist anymore, to their kitchen, each step of the way that food is taken since it's left the farm is subject to a carbon tax, and nobody talks about it.
No, they got to understand. They listen to that myopic, oh, no, but I got a rebate and it's a revenue neutral thing. Well, no, you're paying for it, guys. You might not realize it, but you're paying for it.
It's just not a line item, and that's a problem. I'd love to see a line item everywhere on a receipt that we get that shows here's how much carbon tax it was, because we get that passed on to us as producers, and you'll see that in a lot of other places too, where you'll see a fuel surcharge and a carbon tax surcharge line itemized on a bill, because transport companies can't afford to absorb this cost. Carbon tax drives up the price of everything that they're buying to make their business work as well. They can't afford to take it, and they're competing in a market for lower and lower and lower rates when the cost of carbon tax keeps driving your fuel up and up and up. Like it's a terrible tool, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, well, and taxes are kind of dry talk, and we get economists on or things like that. I get Franco on the show to talk about that, but it kind of makes the people's eyes glaze. I'm kind of bringing that back around, and what I appreciate out of you, though, is at least you bring it into some language, drive it home to where it's really happening, but where it's palatable. I just wanted to bring up, I know you've probably seen it's more of a novelty show, but like, for example, that Clarkson's Farm with Jeremy Clarkson out in England. I mean, it's just kind of a play, almost exaggerated reality TV, but he really does illustrate actually how bureaucracy can really hinder producers from getting creative or doing different things. And I think that it kind of applies all over the place. People forget too that there is a lot of hoops and regulation. It's not like you guys can just have free run and do whatever the hell you want out there. Like, you got a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, it's what I tried to make up one point in the fertilizer ban video that I did, is like, does everybody think we're just out here with nitrogen trying to like sell it like a drug dealer to our crop? Yeah, I know you don't need it, but how about you have a little taste instead and just see how things go? I mean, there's a very specific amount of fertilizer that you can apply to a crop. Everyone thinks that the more fertilizer you throw at a crop, the better it's going to do, which is completely the opposite. You can actually overgrow a crop and it'll lodge and fall to the ground, and you won't be able to pick it up, and you'll cost yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can deal with seed burn if you put too much down at one time. And people that are actually professional farmers, I mean, I rely on a lot of professionals to help me do what I do. They're going to be laughing at me right now. They're like, you haven't even touched half of the points, but like, it's an endless sea of perfection that it takes to grow a crop. And then if you do everything right on your end, you're still relying on Mother Nature to hopefully rain or hopefully be a dry fall. And we never get that. We never get that option.
No, and I mean, it's also like pointing out that with professional drivers who are paying carbon taxes, they can't reduce burning, fuel. They have to. It's part of their job. And they were never burning more than they had to. That's just throwing money away. You guys aren't going to throw fertilizer away. Yeah,
so that's the thing, Cory. And like in my oil field career, I was very involved in transportation, and where everyone's like, oh, well, just reduce. I'm like, fuel is your biggest cost as a transportation company. you already do everything you can to reduce your fuel usage. Right from, we had non-idle bonuses for our drivers, and we would work on wheel hub covers, and we would work on aerodynamic trailers to reduce wind drag. We would do absolutely everything we could to be as efficient as possible without a carbon tax. It's your goal. It's the same with farming. It's the same with everything. These things cost money. And if you run a successful business, your goal is to have the least amount of input with the most amount of profit from what you've grown or your product that you sell to your customer. You don't need a carbon tax to make it happen.
No, it's not an unreasonable goal. Well, I mean, that time went quick there. I'm really glad you came on. I want to close with a few other things. So I noticed, for example, geez, you do some other things. You do some charities. You shaved your beard off the other year. Crap, look at that thing go. I mean, I got beard envy going on. I mean, the hair on my back's growing faster with age, but I still can't grow a beard to save my life.
You know what? If I could grow crops as good as I can grow a beard, I probably wouldn't have to worry so much when I go to visit the banker. But yeah, it seems to grow good. And yeah, definitely, we've definitely got some hair going on again here now. But it's, no, I've had a really good opportunity. Sorry, just low battery warning, the last one that you get. I've had a really good opportunity to be able to work with a few charities and to bring some attention to some different organizations. I'm very honored and humbled to be able to have the opportunity to do that. And the point of this whole thing is for everybody to just have a good time and keep laughing. So hopefully we can keep that going and see where things go.
We got to keep laughing, or we'll truly lose it all. That's for sure. And you
hey, sometimes things are so bad, there's nothing left to do but laugh at them, man.
Oh, so just before I let you go, then, are there any events you got coming up, and where channels can people find you for to see?
Oh man, yeah. So I'm Quick Dick McDick on YouTube. Be careful when you Google that; it can take you to some websites I'm not affiliated with whatsoever. Quick Dick McDick on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok. QD McDick on Instagram, just because apparently they won't let me have that name on Instagram for some reason. And quickdickmcdick.ca. Man, I'm going to be all over the place. I'm booked up right until 2024, trying to get a show list on my website there where I'll be doing stand-up comedy. And if people want to come and check it out, we're usually raising some money for some good organizations while we do it. So
awesome. We'll have to get out and catch one of those shows in person. Well, thanks for taking time to talk to us today. I'll let you get back to your fencing. Try not to nail your thumb if you can avoid it. And I hope we get the chance to talk again soon.
I'll do what I can. Thanks for the chat, Cory. Take care of yourself, man.
All righty. All right. The one, the only, the legend, Quick Dick McDick. I was looking forward to getting him on there, as I said. And he's quite a personality, and that was almost some kind of serious talk out of him because he, again, as you can see, he's a bright guy, and he certainly knows the ins and outs of the agricultural production and in that industry. And as I said, and as you heard at the end, he's on all sorts of channels. He does stand-up comedy. If you haven't seen one of his videos, he does like 5-minute videos on things. Check them out, search them out. As he said, be careful when you're putting some of those terms into a search engine, but they're a really funny, good, and informative watch. I just love seeing serious messaging packaged into something palatable. We can read long essays, columns, articles, all that sort of thing from academics, and and it's got a lot of good content. But when somebody like Quick Dick can put it in a more consumable way, it just reaches a much bigger audience and helps get that messaging across. So let's see what else we got going on here as we go. So, speaking of social media, that's the big thing. That's where our communications are these days. It's a part of every part of our life and everything. And I'm looking at the event you probably heard of. Not everybody's on Twitter, but CBC, our state broadcaster, got labeled as government-funded media on there by Elon Musk over the weekend. And boy, what a kerfuffle that caused. Now, for those not familiar with Twitter, verified accounts, they typically would have a little blue check mark next to them, and most media accounts had them. My account has one, whatever. And now people can actually pay $8 a month and they can get their own blue check mark. And CBC got changed to a gold check mark, and a little part in the description says government funded media, because it is. And it's a good, fair way to label it as what it is. CBC gets 1.4 billion tax dollars per year. So Elon Musk, and he's done it for others. He did it for ABC in Australia, and he's done it for some other state broadcasters, government-run broadcasters, and it is. I mean, they claim to be independent of the government. That's a load of crap. We know better. Come on. Speaking of BS coming out of CBC. But what gets me is how furious the CBC and progressives and leftists were when he did it. I mean, why are you so upset? It's accurate labeling. They are government-funded media. Now, the fun thing to watch again is as a Twitter participant or person or whatever, though, was watching Elon Musk. And yes, he's like a big billionaire kid with a toy. He likes to piss around and poke at them. So when they all were furious because something they were saying, CBC gets 30% of its funding from advertising, it's unfair to say it's all government funded. So Elon Musk went in there and changed it to say 70% government funded. Okay, well, they were still rather upset. And they said, well, actually it's under 70. So he said, okay, fine. And he changed it to 69% government funded. Remember, like I always like to keep pointing out with the Western Standard, we're 0% government funded. The problem with any media, and it's a risk, is you're going to dance with the one that brung you. You're going to respond and react to who's paying your bills, and it's going to impact your coverage. And that's why having a subscription-based service like the Western Standard has, and actually like the Cowboy Network and all the rest of those, you have your audience directly reaching out to you. And that makes you accountable to them, because if you don't provide the service your audience wants to see, well, you're going to go broke. But we will adjust our coverage likewise. It's not like we're going to always just blow sunshine up the butts of our target audience and supporters, but we're accountable to our subscribers. The problem with the CBC is it's accountable to the government. And the government's interests, like it or not, aren't always yours. And even if it's unconscious, and I don't think it's unconscious, but the CBC is reflecting government bias. It's putting out government message. And it drives them nuts when I call them a state broadcaster, because that is what a state broadcaster is, like Pravda in Russia and others that were truly just pure propaganda machines for the government. No, the CBC, well, I think it was fair out of Elon. They're only 70% a propaganda machine for the government. Still way too much. And why, though? Why does it drive them so bananas to have that labeled like that? Big deal. You think you'd be able to shrug it off? Okay, well, Elon did this little thing and changed our check mark. Well, it's because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to think about it. They don't want you to realize how much money is getting poured into that god-awful network. And it's terrible. Come on, what sort of productions have you liked out of CBC? Their ratings are in the toilet. And when you speak of that 30% of advertising revenues, well, you got to think, that's basically, as far as I'm concerned, stolen from the private market. Because how can content providers like ourselves compete in ad sales when we have a mega entity like the CBC that gets $1.4 billion per year that can undercut us on advertising sales and get it all in there, undercut us on the production costs, because they get their money from the taxpayers. So at the very least, just kind of reminding everybody with a little golden check mark, I think it's kind of doing a good public service, just to remind people where their money's coming from. And I don't think enough people think about how much money that is. And it's funny, I got a guy going nuts on me on Twitter about it because I pointed out, because people just look, Post Media got $65 million a year, I think it was, in subsidies. Yeah, I think that sucks too. But so why don't they have a gold check mark? Well, I don't know. I mean, ask Elon. But I mean, that would bring it down then, if we want to make it accurate, to what, 10% of their budget? It's still more than they should get. But I did want to make the comparison. So I said, okay, say they get $65 million a year. The CBC gets $1,400 million a year. 1.4 billion. People forget that's how much that is. $1,400 million. Like, people say, oh, they need that local coverage. It's so important. We'll never have it without the CBC. What a load of crap. For one, the CBC has been closing its local outlets anyways. Most of what they cover is national, and it's biased. Rosie Barton is clearly madly in love with Justin Trudeau. It's wretched. Let's say, and I don't think we should do this, but I want to tell you the way we can get more value for dollar if the intent was actually to have good local Canadian content and coverage across the country. Think about that. Think if you broke that up into $1 million increments, and it's every year, remember, every year. So you had $1,400 million checks. Let's say you just divided it by 10 right across the country, province by province. Boy, PEI is going to do really well on it, but that's fine. Every province could now have a local outlet that gets a check for $1 million every year to help them out. You would have 140 outlets in every province. I mean, every town would have their local outlet with that $1 million seed money to get them going. Now, that would cover local things, wouldn't it? That would cover a few local reporters. That would cover a newsroom. That would cover, I mean, you could really do a lot with $1 million a year. Plus, being like the CBC, you could sell some advertising on top of that. Would that not make far, far, far more impact for local coverage, local news, local production than just cutting a check for $1.4 billion to that wretched, giant, obsolete dinosaur of an organization, the CBC? It's just food for thought. Again, that's not what I really think we should do. I'm just saying we'd get more value for dollar. What we should do is just defund them completely and let them sink or swim as they are, and give that $1.4 billion a year back to taxpayers as a tax break. And I know, oh, well, that's only $35 a Canadian. I hate that argument, or people saying, oh, this new spending initiative is only a cup of coffee a day. Yeah, but the problem is the government is now starting to hit us for like 100 cups of coffee a day, and I can't drink that much. I can't even piss that fast. So, guys, the waste with the CBC, the improper use of our tax dollars, at least to have people know that's where it's coming from, that's who they are. And, you can see why they feel sensitive about it. This was an interesting one. Somebody did a FOIP, a Freedom of Information request, and had a look at Chrystia Freeland, who is our deputy prime minister and finance minister, and I think she's wearing a few hats nowadays and everything. If you might remember, she made a statement a little while back because people were, we're having a hard time making ends meet. We're having a hard time paying the rent, having a hard time buying the groceries. Everything's going up, and our incomes aren't, unless you're a civil servant out striking right now. And she says, oh no, we're tightening our belts too. In fact, people should do like us. And we got rid of our Disney Plus option on our cable package to save money. Yeah, that's what she advised. She really did do that. And they actually polled on it later. And people were furious by it because, it was such a let them eat cake moment. It showed that massive disconnect of where somebody at her level with the amount of money she's got and income and revenue and all expenses paid all the time, no idea what the run-of-the-mill family is going through. I can understand. You might not understand what they're going through, but quit pretending or trying to talk as if you do, because that's even more insulting. And that's why the headline says a slap in the face. That's how Canadians saw it when she got up there. So I understand. Now we don't have Disney Plus. Oh, Chrystia, how do you get by? But I'm sure you probably got Disney Plus to the 5-star hotels that you stay in constantly when you're traveling all over the world on the government dime. So I guess when you don't have it in the household, it's not that much of a handicap. A little rough on the children, I guess. Come on. The nerve of you guys to tell us how to tighten our belts. We got to remember, your boss, Justin Trudeau, had a $6,000 a night hotel room when he went and embarrassed the nation over at Queen Elizabeth's funeral. Our Governor General had a $90,000 day trip to the north. The more recent one with Justin Trudeau was that he was on a $9,000 a night vacation in Jamaica for the new year. Yeah, $9,000 a night. That clown spends more by the time he's finished eating breakfast on a vacation than your average family can spend on their one vacation they may get a year. But Chrystia says you can cut your Disney Plus and you'll be okay. That is where these guys live. This is the disconnect with reality that they have, the entitlement that they have. And that's why we're all suffering right now. And the other thing with that recent revelation of Justin Trudeau on a $9,000 a night vacation at a luxurious villa was who offered him that. That was actually offered to him as well. Why, it was donors to the Trudeau Foundation. Yes, yet again, all roads keep leading to that Trudeau Foundation. Why, when they claim that donations to the Trudeau Foundation don't impact government policy or don't impact Justin Trudeau, well, then why do all these lobbyists keep giving money to that foundation? Why does the Chinese Communist Party give money to the Trudeau Foundation? This foundation that supposedly Trudeau's not connected with. His brother, Alexander Trudeau, was the one who inked the deal for the donation that was laundered. And I'll call it laundered because they hid it and they can't find how to give the refund check back to. They really can't because it went through so many levels of things to try and sneak it in there. Alexander Trudeau's name is on that because he was literally one of the negotiators. That seems to be kind of a direct connection with the family and the foundation, isn't it? By the way, there's a gal named Coyne who's in there as well. That's Justin's half-sister. Pierre was a little prolific once he was finished with Margaret as well. It's actually a pretty broad family. And these guys, again, telling us how to tighten our belts, telling us how we can save a little bit of money by not having Disney Plus. I wish it was so simple as just doing something like that to clean our things up. On a final note with that whole Chinese scandal, because we can't let ourselves forget it, he's kicking it down the road. They've been interfering with elections, 2 different elections. And the guy who investigated that and said there was nothing to see here was the former head of the Trudeau Foundation. Coincidence. And the guy that Justin appointed as his special rapporteur to look into it yet again to make sure if we need an investigation or not. Guess what he's a director of? The Trudeau Foundation. Wow. What a coincidence. Well, in the States, one of those Chinese police stations, and that's what they call them. These are Communist Party offices basically set up in free nations for the purpose of intimidating people of Chinese descent in those nations. Canadians of Chinese descent, they can intimidate, they can threaten, they can pressure, they can push. They're acting on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. In the United States, the FBI raided them and busted them. And in that bust, they found out as well in their probe that, of course, there's links. The guy who was running the Chinese communist police station down in New York was also running the one up in Canada. But nothing's been done about the one in Canada. But I guess we should be thankful the FBI is willing to investigate these things on our behalf and point out, hey, Canada, you might want to do something about this. But we know Justin won't because he doesn't even want a bloody investigation. Well, that's about the news for this week, guys. So I finished it with a bit of a rant and a rave. I'm going to let you go for another week. Thank you all, guys, for tuning in. We'll have another great guest on next week and lots of news to cover. Just that reminder, subscribe to those channels, subscribe to the Western Standard, and thank you all very much for tuning in today, guys. I'll see you next week at this time.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny.
As things are greening up outside, the commodity markets aren't following suit as they're mostly red today. The only thing that is up is cash barley, which is up $3 a ton to $4.22 per metric. And feed wheat's unchanged at $4.20 a metric, and corn is holding steady at $4.15 a metric. Moving to the milling wheat markets, May Minneapolis futures dropped 12.5 cents to $8.73 per bushel, with local hard red spring bid for April movement at $10.25 per bushel delivered. In the oilseeds, nearby canola futures are off $4.80 to $777 per metric ton, with delivered values for April-May movement at $17.50 per bushel. Continuing on to the pulse markets, nearby red lentil prices are trading at 35 cents per pound, and yellow peas remain at $12 per bushel. Finishing up with the cattle markets, June live cattle dropped 1.78 cents to 163.43 per hundredweight. For more information on pricing and picked up on farm options, give me a call at 403-394-1711. I'm Mike Van Dyke at Marketplace Commodities, accurate real-time marketing information and pricing options.